So, when the Civil War begins, this factional element between um, this guy called, as I said, Stand Watie, I think his nephew Elias Boudinot, um, and a family called the Ridges. They are kind of at the head of this Treaty Party faction. And then you have John Ross and his followers as the head of, again, can't remember the name, but the other sort of party. The Stand Watie party are very pro-Confederate. They are pragmatic, as had been shown by the fact that they willingly signed their own removal papers. They are thinking, right, okay, pragmatically, well, where are we? We're in Indian territory. Also, a lot of these, I think, including Stand Watie, a lot of these Cherokees actually had slaves themselves. They had plantations often back east before they were moved out, where they owned slaves. So their way of life, again, going back to the five civilized tribes element, their life is kind of integrated with the sort of white European way of life in the South in a way that some of the other tribes aren't. So, combination of factors, both political and kind of lifestyle related, mean that the Treaty Party side pretty instantaneously with the Confederacy. John Ross, however, is more ambivalent. He wants neutrality. Interestingly, he himself owns slaves, but he is not pro-Confederacy. He's kind of on the board. He's sort of on the line. He can see this. He can see both sides. But basically, what happens is because a lot of his followers are also slave owners, they are more keen to side with the South. So reluctantly, he says, "Okay, fine," and they sign a treaty with the Confederacy. Now, there is another kind of angle to this, which is just simply the geography of it. So they are in Oklahoma. Just above Texas, and they are very much in the southern part of the world here, and it's very remote, and the Union Army is nowhere to be seen at this point. So, if the question is who do we side with, is it the people who were right there, basically with a gun to our head, saying join us or else, or is it the people who we'd have to wait weeks and weeks and weeks before we saw them, if we ever saw them.
Well, yeah, so question was they're ever even going to show up in the first place.
Exactly. So it's very much a sort of pragmatic thing of I guess we better side with the South, as well as there being, as I said, these kind of cultural political factors that are leaning them that way anyway. Because that, as well, you have to remember, although there is this sense that they are more aligned, more in tune with the kind of white European sort of southern way of life. The white Europeans are obviously white supremacist at this point. There is a racist ideology in the South which considers all non-whites to basically be in the same
category
boat.
for them.
So yes, exactly. So this is somewhat mitigated by the quote unquote civilized nature of the five tribes. That saves them somewhat because they have more in common with the white population. But as we will come to later, there are other tribes such as the Lumbee, who are a kind of sort of subsect of the Cherokee. Although the Cherokee kind of disown them and don't like to say that they're related in any way. Who had never taken on any of these kind of manners or institutions or religion, and so they are very much viewed as in the same category as blacks, as the slaves. So there is really no love lost here from the sort of white supremacist perspective towards the Native Americans, but the Native Americans are just basically making a kind of pragmatic decision at this point. Watie himself becomes, he rises, I believe he's the only Native American to do so, he rises to the rank of Brigadier General. He forms a company called the Cherokee Mounted Rifles, and his political opponent, John Ross, after initially supporting the Confederacy and he had what was he called? Drew, a man called Drew, was, again, Native American, part of the Cherokee, was leading a unit of men who actually switched side at one point. And because Ross has connections with Drew, and Drew is making this pragmatic decision, I think it's even in the middle of a battle. They had what they called pins, which were sort of cross bits of metal. I don't know whether it was sort of crossed that way or crossed like a Christian cross, but they had cross bits of metal on their lapels, which indicated that they were fighting for the North.
Right.
That was one of the ways that they would differentiate themselves. So his company, Drew's company, switch basically in mid battle and totally switch sides. And John Ross then goes with him, because at this point the North have come down, they're involved, the fighting is happening, and they think, okay, if we switch sides now, we actually have some military weight behind us, and we have protection. So at that point, I can't remember the battle, I can probably put it up. At that point, John Ross actually switches sides. So you now have those internal kind of bubbling hostilities within the Cherokee Nation have now broken out into the open. And they are on opposing sides of the war. So fast forwarding to the end of the war, curiously, so I told you last time about the surrender at Appomattox Courthouse between Grant and Lee. Now that is the kind of big one. That is the big surrender. But inevitably, like with all of these things, there are several armies at play. It's not just the Eastern Theatre. So gradually it trickles out. The various surrenders kind of happen. It's a sort of domino effect after Appomattox. And the very last Confederate general to surrender in the war is Stand Watie, is the Cherokee Nation, Cherokee Mounted Rifles guy. So what happens afterwards, unfortunately, for those who have sided with the South, is that they are, again, we've seen the Union doing this before. If there's ever a sort of ambiguity, they're gonna come down hard on the side that basically punishes the Indians and cheats them of their land. And so this happens again in the case of the Civil War. The entire Cherokee Nation, even though it's split north and south, as we saw, they were treated as though they had been traitors by joining the South. So there is a thing called the 1866 Reconstruction Treaty, which is incredibly brutal to the Cherokee Nation in stripping it of its rights.